This is a great time, I think, for women to be alive and to find their voice and to have a seat at the table in business, in politics, in a lot of areas. And it's also a time that takes a lot of work and vigilance from us still to step into the light of our truth and claim our voice. And that can be done and hopefully will be done till the day you die.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, a global community of women in midlife. I'm here to tell you that it's your time now to rediscover what has always been inside of you and bring that out into the world. If you're wondering what's next, but don't know quite what that is, or if you feel a twinge in your heart telling you that you have so much more to do and so much more to offer, you're in the right place. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Do you want to leave your job, start your own business, take control of your health, reignite the passion in your marriage, write that book, or at least that first chapter? Transitions like this can be daunting, but through listening to my story and interviews with incredible women every week, I hope to inspire you to take action. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. It's hard to believe it's already June. This year is moving along so fast. I hope you're taking the time, however, to pause, at least a little every day, to reflect on all that is good and great in your life. I know sometimes it's hard because of the daily stresses we have, but if we focus on how we feel, what makes us feel good, I believe more of that goodness will come into our lives. I don't know about you, but I loved watching the Jubilee celebrations of 70 years of the Queen of England's reign. I have always been fascinated by the royals, probably the romantic in me. But this weekend, I was thinking about the Queen herself. What might she be thinking after a whole life of service and the whole world celebrating her? Obviously, she must be contemplating her life and probably realizing that her reign will be over soon. I heard her son, Prince Charles' speech, and it actually brought tears to my eyes because of this one thing that he said. He said, "What gets my mother up in the morning is all of you." And that's how I feel sometimes. And isn't that what it's all about? Getting up in the morning for a purpose, or to feel as though we have contributed the best we can to ourselves and those around us. If it comes down to it, that's why I'm doing this. I get up in the morning to try and make a positive difference, even in one person's life. What is your reason for getting up in the morning? I feel grateful to have been granted this opportunity to come into your ears every week with messages that I hope resonate with you. I'm here to help you uncover what that purpose may be that lifts you up. So thank you for being here. Before I get into this week's episode, I wanted to give you a few reminders. My coaching program is open to a few more people. So if you're interested in really uncovering what your why is, let's have a chat and I can share more in a complimentary coaching consultation with me. Email me at kavita@powerpurposeplay.ca and tell me what is on your mind. I'm also pleased to share that our webinar series has gone off to a great start, and the third in the series of webinars and workshops called the Midlife Rediscovery Blueprint will be this Friday, June 10th at noon Eastern Standard Time. This week, I will be walking you through the importance of visioning your future, including a very powerful visioning exercise. Join me this Friday. The link to the webinar is in the show notes, or you can email me directly again at kavita@powerpurposeplay.ca, and I can send you the login details to you. We will also be providing worksheets, and exercises for you to follow along with as well. In addition, as I mentioned in previous podcasts, in our quest to empower 1 million women in midlife worldwide, we're offering our online course, It's My Time Now, completely free of charge for a limited time. Email me again and tell me why you think it's your time now. and you will receive access to this comprehensive course with 7 modules and 26 lessons. It is a curated journey I created from my own experience of reinvention and years of training and research, as well as through interviewing countless women. If you're interested, contact me today. I'm sure you will enjoy this week's podcast episode with Stephanie Raffelock as we discuss everything about the great creative surge that begins in midlife. Women all around us are demonstrating courage and purpose as they stand in the light of truth. I think it's appropriate that the world celebrated the powerful queen this weekend. Whatever your beliefs about the royals, I think you will agree that she serves as an example that, regardless of your age, you can make a difference, and you can find that thing that gets you up in the morning. Enjoy this episode, and I'll be back at the end with the key takeaways. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita Ahuja, and I'm thrilled to come in every week to provide a little inspiration to you to begin to listen to that little voice inside and bring out your power and purpose in the next stage of your life. I always say, if not now, when? This is a magical time for us as women in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. And my mission with Power Purpose Play through this podcast, my coaching program, and my course, It's My Time Now, is to empower 1 million women in midlife worldwide to make their next chapter in life the best chapter ever. The question is, will you be one of them? I am so excited to have on the show today Stephanie Raffelock, who I believe shares a similar vision. Stephanie is an author, blogger, speaker, and much more. Her goal is to inspire women to embrace the strength and power of their story. Stephanie is the author of Creatrix Rising, Unlocking the Power of Midlife Women. She's also penned the award-winning book, A Delightful Little Book on Aging. A graduate of Naropa University's program in Colorado in writing and poetics, Stephanie has worked as a freelancer for the Aspen Times and the Rogue Valley Messenger. A former podcaster and iHeartRadio host, she shares her passion for aging, women, and feminist history. Her commitment to working with women extends to teaching personal development classes for the nonprofit Dress for Success. A recent transplant to Austin, Texas, Stephanie enjoys an active life with her husband, Dean, and their Labrador Retriever. So welcome so much to the show. Stephanie, how are you doing today?
Just great. And thanks for the shout out to my Labrador Retriever.
Yes. Yeah. We were just
always
talking
in my office.
Yeah. We were just talking about how it's working from home now. It's your dogs start barking, it becomes part of the show. So I have one too. So, so I'm so really happy to speak with you today, Stephanie, and thanks for being here. And I wanted to kind of start with, you seem to be a real powerful advocate for the positive potential of aging. And as I mentioned in your bio, you've been writing and studying about the positive, active, and graceful aging movement. So if you could tell us, where did this passion to celebrate life, no matter what your age is, where did that come from?
I think that it came from writing about aging and the response that I got from so many women who would say of my articles or my blogs, I'm not done yet. And that inspired me to look at how it is we view women of a certain age and how we view ourselves at a certain age. Some of our misgivings and our fears about getting older really come from inside the house. They don't come culturally. But a lot of it comes culturally. You look at companies that target women for their product, and the sweet spot is between the age of 20 and the age of 45. And it's like, well, what happens at 46? Are you done?
We would just drop off the face of the earth, or what happens?
Right. Right.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is a great time, I think, for women to be alive and to find their voice and to have a seat at the table in business, in politics, in a lot of areas. And it's also a time that takes a lot of work and vigilance from us still to step into the light of our truth and claim our voice. Mm-hmm. And that can be done, and hopefully will be done till the day you die.
Right.
that it's not something that ends. It's not like, oh, you're too old now. Like go sit in the Barca lounger and stare off into space.
Mm-hmm,
That's what
mm-hmm.
old women do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, I think that old women they're the magicians of the culture. They have time to contemplate and reflect upon life and then shine that light for the women that stand behind them.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Obviously, wholeheartedly with everything you just said. I love that I'm not done yet, because no, we're not done yet. And that's why it's like I say, it's my time now. I'm not done yet. It's all kind of the same in that. I love that, magicians of the culture. That's beautiful. So that this kind of got you with your writing, when you said that people responded to your writing, that just kind of, so it started this desire in you, I guess. Is that correct?
It became the theme about which I write. There's always something about aging in whatever it is I write. And I hope to hang on to that, because I think that we need those voices. And I hope, my greatest hope, just like you hope to inspire 1 million women, I hope to inspire 1 million women that will then in turn inspire women intergenerationally. So it's not just us looking at claiming our power and our strength, but it's the younger women too, who say, this is where the journey begins, and this is a journey that does not end.
That's a really important piece, because yes, we can claim our power, but then we become role models for the younger generation, and we need to spread that message. So that's very true. Yeah. Thanks for adding that. So I was very fascinated, Stephanie, by the topic of your new book, Creatrix Rising. I'm sorry, I keep on saying pronouncing it wrong, but it's Creatrix, right? Creatrix
That's
Rising.
correct.
Yes. And it's called Unlocking the Power of Midlife Women. And obviously that speaks very true to my heart. And in the book, you talk about the great creative surge that women of later years are experiencing, personally and collectively. And so can you tell us a little bit, explain that about the book, and what is this new archetype of creatrix?
Creatrix comes from the 3 Greek fates. There was a spinner, a weaver, and a cutter. And the weaver was the creatrix. The word literally means a woman who makes things. So if you look around in our culture right now, women are making things at a greater rate than ever before. That's the great creative surge. The energy of motherhood, which is all about creation in a very physical and spiritual sense, morphs now into another type of creativity that expresses the heart and the soul. And that's what the creatrix is. And that's a passage that I believe happens somewhere around menopause. That menopause, in fact, is the great spiritual bridge from one part of life to the creatrix part of life, because the energy shifts, everything shifts a bit. And the 3rd chapter is like the most exciting chapter in the play or in the book. It's where the transformation happens. It's where the unresolved and the unanswered are whisked away from the soul, and we're presented with some kind of peacefulness or resolve. So that's the archetype that I propose for women in this stage of life, menopause onward, as opposed to the old paradigm of maiden, mother, crone.
That's really interesting. And that's what comes from the Greek archetypes and the heart and soul. I find that fascinating, because I think what happens sometimes as women when they face menopause, and then they're facing their 3rd chapter in life, they can either embrace it full force, or they maybe are held back or afraid of getting older, or they feel like as though I'm done. So based on the research and your experience, why do women in midlife really hesitate to pursue what we really want in our next stage?
I think that fear is twofold. In one regard, there is just the natural human fear of my life will come to an end. This won't go on forever. So there's that. And what does the future hold? And nobody really knows that. I mean, we have religious ideas or spiritual ideas about what's next, but the truth is none of us have been there and back.
Right.
And then secondly, there is a cultural overlay, going back to that target market thing of like 20 to 45, where women begin to feel insignificant or irrelevant or used up. And that becomes the work. What is the work of the third act? It's not about trying to stay young looking. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The work of the third act is finding that contemplative, reflective piece that kind of automatically comes with age. There's a reason that we slow down. And I think part of that reason is that this is the time to reflect upon the arc of your life and to appreciate the gift that it's been.
Mm-hmm.
So there are lots of contributing factors, and there is work within ourselves to be done for the why of why is this scary? Why is this so tough? And it's like, well, what phase of your life has not been?
Right.
When you were in high school and a teenager, were those really your easiest years? They weren't mine.
I guess it's a perspective, right? When you're in it, it seems like the toughest. And then when you look back, it's like, oh, that was, when you think our hindsight is, oh, that was the best time of my life. But when you're in it, it's not the case, right?
Right. I think that's true.
Yeah. When you said it's time to reflect and appreciate. So how do we practically do that? Or how do you maybe had from your experience or from your life, how do you take the time? What are some ways that we can actually embrace the stage and take the time to reflect?
Well, I'm a big fan of having tea on the porch or outside.
Yeah.
During my working days, there was a frenzy of competitiveness, a frenzy of productivity. It's like we base the value of our life on how productive we are with something. And so as you get older, there is more space that's created. Some people cut back on work, some people retire, but there is more space that's created where you don't feel the need to constantly be ambitious, to constantly be fulfilling goals. And so what do you do with that time? And I think that there's great value found in just sitting on the porch, having tea. For some people, it's meditation or it's yoga. It's something that slows us down enough to breathe and be and appreciate that all of this life has been an amazing, amazing miracle. And to note that this passage of age, it's a remarkable and noble passage. There is a reason that nature keeps us alive past our childbearing years. What is it? And so for me, the what is it is that these are the contemplative years. These are the reflective years. These are the years to slow down and look carefully. These are the years to write your memoir, to do the art, to make the garden, to do the things that you have always wanted to do and to make. And it's just a matter of how curious are you and what will you explore?
Yes, that's really perfect, because I totally agree with you, because the concept of slowing down and contemplating, when I put play in power purpose play to me means taking them time on the porch to drink your tea or sit on the beach or even just breathe and even if it's 10 minutes a day, but to really think about what it is. Well, firstly, be grateful for everything that you've gone through and be excited for what comes next, right? So, and it's only in those moments where we can kind of connect with our inner self, and that guides us forward. So completely agree with you. It's really about the perspective, I believe, right?
Yes, I think perspective is a good word for it.
Yes. So I wanted to go on talk about your first book, and it's called A Delightful Little Book on Aging. And I like the title. I love the title, actually. It takes your readers on a journey into older age with the help of a story, philosophy, and a philosophy of gratitude. And we kind of talked about that a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit more about the book and why you wrote it and perhaps some of its main messages?
The book is a series of essays about aging and really how I felt about it in my 60s. I'm in my 70s now, so I have a little more perspective. But entering my 60s seemed like I really was at the threshold of old age. My attitude about that has changed greatly. I think old age happens when we are ready to recede from life. It doesn't have to happen before then. And I'm clearly not ready to recede from life yet, and certainly not in my 60s. So this book, A Delightful Little Book in Aging, begins with the concept of grief, the sense of loss in one's life. That grief is one of those things that brings us home to ourselves because no one escapes it. And yet it's the thing that we want to push away the most, the sense of longing and grief that we feel in life. And yet it's the liberating thing. It's the transformative thing. Grief is, along with love, those are the great transformative forces in life. So that's what this book is. It's a series of essays about aging and grief and curiosity and gratitude and being a student again, and all of those delicious, yummy things that come with getting older.
Talk to me a little bit about that, about grief being a liberating thing, because when we lose people very close to us, then how can we turn that into a liberating thing?
Well, think about what grief does for us. It transforms us. And all of aging takes place against a backdrop of grief. We have loss our entire life. When we begin to lose our parents, our siblings, our friends, it becomes more acute and exquisite. And we're asked to deal with more, certainly. But now you have this space where you are reflective. How much better my life is for that person that I loved had I not known them, had I not loved them, and spared myself this pain of a broken heart. How much better is my life for having known them and having lost them and knowing the depths with which I loved. That's kind of the linchpin. And that's, I don't want to make light of anyone's grief and say, well, get over it, transform it into something else. But just to know that grief and loss are also a part of life. And just because there is grief and loss does not mean that celebration and joy come to an end. But we are asked to work with it within ourselves. It is transformative. And out of that grief and that longing, very often is born creative energy.
You just gave me the goosebumps, honestly, just thinking about the way to think about grief, because often we avoid it, like you said, or we go internal and we shut ourselves out from the world, maybe. But thinking about it that way is like, I'm so grateful that this person was in my life, and what can I learn from my experience living or having that person in my life? And that is a great way to look at it. So thanks for sharing that.
I guess the other thing that I will share about grief is that it's not a process that has an end point to it, but it does change. So I no longer grieve the loss of my mother in the same way that I did 20 years ago. It's not so fresh, but I still miss her. Mother's Day is coming up. I think about that. I have continued my relationship with her. That's the other thing about grief, is that the relationship with the person that you lost doesn't necessarily end. It just changes.
Does it get better?
I think so. I mean, it has for me. It has for me, with especially with my mother. There has been some resolve in certain areas, because I can still have the conversations, and it's given me great insight into her life and also into my own. And the mother-daughter relationship, I just think, is one of the most important relationships that, that women have in their life.
Yes.
So yes, I do think that it gets better, and I do think it changes. And that's also part of the liberating force of grief, is that because it morphs and it follows us, it allows us psychological growth. It allows us spiritual growth.
Great perspective. That's awesome. That's really great. I wanted to ask you also, you have talked about becoming wise elders in a youth-oriented culture. And you mentioned it a little bit with the products that are in the market and all that. But what do you mean by becoming wise elders?
You have to claim your power at this point of life, just like you do at every other point of life. I'm having an experience right now of being a wise elder and also being a student and a mentee at the very same time. I'm doing a collaborative writing piece, with a woman who is 42 years younger than I am. And it's this wonderful intergenerational dynamic. And I allow her to teach me while at the same time I'm able to gift her my wisdom. And that's not because I sit her down and read her beads for her. Your generation, this is what they need to be doing. Nobody wants to hear that. I didn't want to hear that when I was 28 years old. She certainly doesn't. But just by modeling, as you said, modeling this point of your life, how you live your life, how you make peace with things in your life, how you unravel and make sense of the more difficult parts of your life. To share that with a younger woman gives her perspective. And then, of course, the other side of eldering is that we need to open ourselves to what does that young person then give to me that I need to pay attention to? Because nobody reaches a destination point where you've got everything figured out and it's all right. So I like the idea of being able to learn and grow throughout life. And one of the ways that we elder is to have those relationships with younger people whereby we get to offer our wisdom, but we are also open to the wisdom of youth.
That triggered something because I really think that it's so important to have this intergenerational discussion. And I don't think that's happening enough. And I wanted to get your opinion on that in terms of, do you think that the world is changing not only with respect to this topic of sharing cross-generation, sharing our wisdom, but also of recognizing women in midlife and beyond? Like, do you think it's changing from your experience and from maybe your research? Have you seen that? Hi, my friend. Kavita here. Do you often feel blocked from moving forward? We all feel that way at times. These are referred to as energy blocks. I've created a short, actionable PDF guide to help you release your negative energy blocks. Click the link in the description to download it now for free. Now, let's get back to the episode.
I think that it is changing, and I think that we all need to be advocates and activists to do away with ageism. Ageism is one of the last politically incorrect bastions of bad humor and stereotypical judgments about a group of people. We marginalize older people in this culture. And so that's one of the reasons that intergenerational learning, intergenerational relationships are not quite happening to the degree that I would like to see them happen. So then the work becomes our own. We can't expect the world to owe us anything or to do something for us, but we can start having those conversations on our own and looking for those opportunities where you can have a relationship with a younger person and open yourself. And I think the opening yourself to learn from them is just as important as the wisdom that you have to share. Because like I said, nobody really wants to have their beads read for them when they're 28 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about some of the women, millennial women, for example, and they have so much confidence in themselves. They just go for things. Whereas women, I think our age or in midlife and beyond, they would kind of hesitate. We don't just go for it, and we think twice before doing things.
Yes, we do. Right? We're still trying to be good girls, I think, in my generation.
Yeah. So that's something I always admire when I see my nieces, for example, and they just no hesitation. They just go for it. It's like, okay.
And the other thing that I love about the younger generations is that they are the most inclusive generations ever. There's just no thought about it. Why would you have a problem with somebody who's different than you? Right. Why not embrace it? It's like diversity is a good thing.
Yes.
It's a quality to aspire to.
Yes.
And that's very different from my generation or even yours, that this inclusiveness really gives me hope for the world.
And they're also very aware of the environment, and they're so concerned about, and truly concerned, and they really actually do the things that are going to make our environment sustainable. It's refreshing to see.
Yes, I agree.
Yes. So, but on that note, what would you think? You said I think we talked about this a little bit, but about women, why we're not washed up after 50, right? So what is it? Why are we so special? What is it about us that we can bring forward and say, we're not washed up. We're we're actually just getting started, as we talked about in the very beginning.
Well, once again, I think there is that great creative surge that transfers over from the motherhood years to these later years.
Mm-hmm.
And so just that creative energy that can be attached to anything is of great value.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. There's the fact that we're not afraid to get reflective and contemplative as we might have been in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, that we're more willing to look into our psyche, to look deeply, to figure things out, to hold our life as a story. I like the idea of women empowering themselves by telling their story, because so often we go through life holding on to our story that like, oh, my story is dark. I did some bad stuff when I was in my 20s. There's concern. And when women start to share their story, what we see is we're never as alone as we think we are. And that it ceases to become like your story or my story, but just the story of womankind. You know, women for a long, long time, way before my generation and my mother's generation, my grandmother's generation, were working towards our liberation, millions and millions of tiny little steps that make the world what it is today. And I like the idea of honoring those ancestors for those millions and millions of little steps that they take that made a difference.
Yes, it's true. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I sharing stories, because we all think, oh, maybe our story or what we want have gone through is not important and who's going to care. But if we share it, the more we share our stories, we realize, oh my goodness. And I've seen this in my 50 plus episodes I've done in this podcast, for example, is there's a lot of commonalities in, for example, how we face our obstacles, how we gain our courage, and how we actually face this next stage of life. And as you were talking, it kind of something triggered in that in the last 2 years or so with COVID. I think people, not just women, but people in general have gotten more into that contemplative state just because they've been forced to. So I just find that interesting that it's not seen as, oh, a weird thing. Like it's not seen as, oh, it's just being woo-woo or whatever. It's actually people are doing that more and more because they were at home and they realized that maybe I can craft my life the way I want it to be. I don't know what your thoughts on that with respect to the last couple of years.
I think that self-knowledge is such a powerful force.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, being 2 years where you're not completely influenced by all the people that you're seeing, by the job that you're going to, by all the different outer forces in your life, but life becomes more internal because here you are at home and your world suddenly gets very small.
Mm-hmm.
When your world gets small, there is a tendency, I think, to go inside and gain some real inner sight. So an inner sight leads to self-knowledge. And when you have self-knowledge, the idea of going into the third chapter does not seem nearly as daunting. Right. Or going into any chapter for that matter.
Yes.
Self-knowledge will reveal all things.
Yes. Yes. Fantastic. So Stephanie, in terms of what maybe one thing that you would want to really impart to the audience, the people that are listening, not only from your books, but just generally in terms of how can they embrace life moving forward? What would be one piece of advice? I know that you have so much to share, I'm sure, but it's hard to distill it into one thing. But
I think one of the great parts of embracing life, one of the easy things that we can do for ourselves, is to share our kindness freely. Sometimes women in work can get very, very competitive with each other. And the relationship becomes strained and unpleasant. But we're at a stage where we can lift other women up through simple kindnesses, encourage, support, the kind of encouragement, support, and love that you want. When we act upon our own kindness, which is like the little black dress of emotion, it goes with everything, we really empower ourselves. And that's, I think, what empowerment is. It isn't some kind of strength or courage that descends upon us. It's more of how can you be kind to the women around you and lift them up? Take the attention off of yourself for a moment and you'll get it back tenfold in self-knowledge when you can give to other women in that way. So that would be my one piece of advice.
That's beautiful.
Don't be shy with your kindness.
Don't be shy with your kindness and lift others up.
Lift others up, yeah.
With support. And find somebody who can help you lift yourself up if you don't have the support, right? Because we oftentimes don't ask enough. We don't ask for help enough when it's so important to ask for the help if we don't feel that we have that support. So that's a wonderful tip. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Stephanie, where can we find you and what's next for you? Maybe you could share what you're up to now and where our audience can find you.
And where it's all going.
That's where it's all going, yeah.
I can be found at byline-stephanie.com, and you can learn about my books and my blog and some of the things that I do there. What's next for me is an anthology that I edited that will be out this June called Life in the Time of Unbearable Crises. And it was inspired by the idea that during unbearable crises, what artists need to do is to make more art, that we need art more than we need poets, not politicians. Oh. And so I'm very proud of the work, and the women in the She Writes Press publishing community that I'm a part of that contributed essays and poetry and art. The proceeds from this book all go to World Central Kitchen to benefit Ukraine.
That's amazing.
And it's a book that I'm really proud of. So
as you should be. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's June. It's coming up.
It's coming up in June. Yes.
Wow. I love that. Life in the Time of Unbearable Crises. And we've seen a lot of that lately, haven't we?
We have seen way too much of that lately.
Yes.
So we need women and we need artists.
Yes. That's beautiful. Well, you must come back then when it's released, and we can, or at least we can definitely share. I mean, not one, not two, but you have 3 books, so that's fabulous. And I think the messages of the creativity, bring that out. We're not going down. We're lifting each other up. So I think the messages that you impart in your books and your work is very much needed in this time of our lives. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. And I would say right back at you. Keep doing the good work. Keep doing the good work. We're trying. One woman at a time, right? Yep. That's right. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for your time. Thank you. I trust you enjoyed my conversation with Stephanie. It gives me hope that there's still so much inside of us to discover, to create, and to contribute. Here are her key takeaways. Number 1, this is a great time for women to be alive and to find their voice and to have a seat at the table in business and politics in a lot of areas. And it's also a time that takes a lot of work and vigilance from us, still to step into the light of our truth and claim our voice, and hopefully that can be done till the day you die. Number 2, older women are the magicians of the culture. They have time to contemplate and reflect on life, and then shine that light for the women that stand behind them. 3, in our culture right now, women are making things at a greater rate than ever before. That's the great creative surge. 4, the 3rd chapter is the most exciting chapter in the play or in the book. It's where the transformation happens, and we are presented with some kind of peacefulness or resolve. Number 5, there is a reason that we slow down, and part of that reason is to reflect on the arc of your life and to appreciate the gift that it's been. As you get older, there's more space that's created where you don't feel the need to constantly be ambitious or fulfilling goals. 6, there is a reason that nature keeps us alive past our childbearing years. What is it? These are the contemplative, reflective, to slow down, to look carefully, write your memoir, do the art, make the garden, do the things that you've always wanted to do. Just a matter of how curious are you and what will you explore. 7, when women start to share their story, what we see is we are never as alone as we think we are. And it ceases to become my story or your story, but just the story of womankind. 8, when we act upon our own kindness, which is like the little black dress of emotion, it goes with everything. We really empower ourselves. That's what empowerment is. Take the attention off yourself for a moment, and you'll get it back tenfold. Thank you so much for listening. Remember,
What gets you up in the morning? If you need help figuring that out, reach out to me as I can provide you with my unique guidance from my own experience and extensive training. Seek me out as a coach, attend my webinars, take my courses. It's all here for you to enrich yourself with. You just have to take the first step. Remember, if not now, when? Till next week, my friend, stay safe and stay well.